The air in the St. Jude's Cathedral was thick with the scent of lilies and betrayal. 400 guests sat in silence, their eyes darting between the man at the altar and the woman in the white dress whose world was currently collapsing. We believe that your value isn't found in your bank account, but in your spirit. But we also believe that sometimes, the universe likes to give the proud a very expensive lesson in humility. Few love stories where the underdog wins and the arrogant fall on their faces. Do me a favor right now, hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications, and leave a comment below saying, I believe in the humble. It helps our community grow and it ensures you never miss a moment of the justice we serve on this channel. Now let's begin. Nia stood there, her hands trembling as she held a bouquet of wildflowers, flowers she had picked herself because she couldn't afford the $5,000 florist bill Marcus had insisted on. Her dress was beautiful, but if you looked closely at the hem you could see the delicate hand stitching where she had repaired it herself. It was her mother's dress. It was all she had. Marcus, standing in a $4,000 custom-tailored tuxedo, didn't look like a man in love. He looked like a man who was closing a business deal that had suddenly gone bad. He looked at Nia not with tenderness but with a cold, sharpening disgust. I can't do it, Marcus's voice boomed, echoing off the stained glass windows. The whisper started instantly. A ripple of shock through the pews. Nia felt the blood drain from her face. Marcus, the vows. We were just about to. The vows are for people with a future, Nia, Marcus interrupted loud enough for the front row, his wealthy business partners, to hear every word. I did some math last night. Your father's estate in Nigeria? It's a dirt farm. Your savings? Non-existent. I'm a man on the rise, Nia. I'm about to partner with the Sterling Group. I can't have a wife who brings nothing to the table but a used car and a heart of gold. Gold doesn't pay the mortgage in Buckhead. He stepped down from the altar, leaving her standing there alone. He walked toward a woman sitting in the third row, Chloe, the daughter of a real estate mogul. Everyone knew Marcus had been networking with her for months. Chloe has a seat at the table, Marcus said, looking back at Nia one last time. You're just a waitress in a white dress. Stay here and cry. It's the only thing you can afford to do. Nia stood frozen. The humiliation was a physical weight crushing the lungs inside her chest. The guests, people she thought were her friends, began to laugh. They began to record. In 30 seconds, the video of the penniless bride would be on every social media feed in Atlanta. Now, before I tell you what happened when the doors of that cathedral swung open an hour later, I want to welcome you back to the channel. If you are new here, you found the home of the humble rise. Here we tell the stories the world tries to hide. We tell stories about the women who are counted out, the men who are mocked for their poverty, and the legendary payback that happens when the truth finally comes to light. And stick around, because today's story isn't just about a wedding gone wrong. It's about a secret buried for 30 years. It's about a woman who was tested by the man she loved, and a man who failed that test so spectacularly it cost him everything he ever built. Because while Marcus was walking out of that church with his new rich girlfriend, he had no idea that a convoy of black Rolls-Royce Phantoms was already turning onto the street. He had no idea that the waitress he just insulted was about to become the most powerful woman in the state. Let's take it back to the beginning. To the day Nia met Marcus and the lie that started it all. Nia Mensah was 24 years old when she met Marcus Thorne. At the time, Nia was working 2 jobs. By day, she was a junior researcher for a nonprofit. By night, she wore a black apron and served steak and lobster to the elite of Buckhead at a restaurant called the Gilded Lily. She drove a 2005 Toyota Corolla with a bumper held on by hope and zip ties. Lived in a studio apartment where the heater rattled like a ghost in the night. But Nia didn't complain. Her parents, who had immigrated from a small village outside Kumasi, Ghana, had raised her with a singular philosophy: a person's character is built in the shadows, not the spotlight. Her father, Kofi, was a quiet man who spent his weekends tending to a community garden. He wore old flannels and boots caked in red clay. When he died suddenly, during Nia's senior year of college, he left her a small wooden box and a deed to a family plot back home. Marcus, who was a rising star in a high-end brokerage firm, saw the deed one night while Nia was organizing her papers. He saw the word estate. He saw the legal seal of the Ghanaian government. And Marcus, being the predator he was, did some quick greedy math. He assumed Nia was a stealth wealth heiress, one of those rich kids who lives like a pauper to stay grounded. He turned on the charm. He brought her flowers. He pretended to love her simple life. "I love that you're so humble, Nia," he would say while taking her to a park for a date because he didn't want to spend money on someone he hadn't verified. Yet, it's so refreshing to find a woman who isn't obsessed with labels. Nia fell for it. She fell hard. For a girl who had spent her life working, Marcus felt like a reward. He was handsome, ambitious, and seemed to see her for who she was. Or so she thought. The first crack in the mask appeared 6 months into their relationship. Marcus had invited Nia to a corporate gala. Nia, wanting to save money, had bought a dress from a vintage thrift store and spent 3 nights tailoring it to look like a designer piece. When Marcus picked her up, he didn't compliment her. He looked at her shoes. "Are those off-brand?" he asked, his lip curling. "They're comfortable, Marcus. And I think they look great with the dress," Nia said, trying to keep her voice light. "Nia, people at this gala check the soles of your shoes before they check the color of your eyes. Image is everything. If you want to be with a man like me, you have to look like you belong." He spent the entire night ignoring her, huddled in corners with men who wore watches that cost more than Nia's college tuition. Nia sat at a table sipping water, realizing that Marcus wasn't in love with her. He was in love with the version of her he hoped was rich. But Nia stayed. Why? Because she believed in the Kofi rule. Wait for the storm to pass before you judge the sky. She thought Marcus was just stressed. Thought that once they were married, his insecurities would fade. Then came the estate visit. 3 months before the wedding, Marcus insisted they fly to Ghana to see the Mensah estate. He had already started telling his friends he was marrying into old African money. "I want to see the land, Nia. I want to see the heritage," he said, his eyes gleaming with greed. They arrived in the village. It wasn't a sprawling mansion with gold gates. It was a modest, beautiful farmhouse surrounded by acres of cocoa trees and a small schoolhouse Nia's father had built. The people there lived simply. They wore traditional cloth. They greeted Nia with tears of joy, calling her the daughter of the soil. Marcus was horrified. He stood in the middle of the cocoa grove in his $900 Italian loafers, looking at the goats and the children playing in the dirt. "Where is the house, Nia?" he hissed. "Where is the estate?" "This is it, Marcus," Nia said, her voice filled with pride. "My father provided education for 200 children on this land. He provided jobs for 50 families. This is his legacy. This is a farm, Nia. This is a tax liability." Marcus yelled. "I told my partners you were a landowner. I told them you had assets. I can't put a cocoa grove on a financial statement." He spent the rest of the trip in the hotel in Accra, refusing to meet Nia's aunts and uncles. He was already planning his exit. But he had a problem. The wedding was already paid for by Nia's meager savings and his parents' small contribution. If he cancelled now, he'd look like the bad guy to his firm. So he decided on a crueler plan. He would wait. He would find a replacement. And then he would humiliate her so thoroughly that no one would blame him for leaving her. He started working late with Chloe Sterling. Chloe, whose father owned half the commercial real estate in downtown Atlanta. Chloe, who wore diamonds to breakfast. Nia saw the signs. The coldness. The way he stopped touching her hand. The way he stopped calling her baby and started calling her Nia, like she was a stranger. "Is everything okay, Marcus?" she asked a week before the wedding. He was sitting on the floor handwriting the place cards to save on printing costs. Marcus didn't even look up from his phone. "Everything is fine. Just make sure you don't mess up the seating chart. I need the Sterlings at the front. They're the only people coming who actually matter." Nia bit her lip. She looked at the small wooden box her father had left her. It hadn't opened it yet. He had told her, "Open this on the morning of your Wedding after you've said your prayers. Not a moment before. She reached out to touch the box, but Marcus snapped at her. And for heavens. Sake, don't bring that dusty old box to the wedding. It looks like trash. Like that dress you're planning to wear. Nia didn't cry. Not then. She just went back to writing the cards. Mensah. She was built in the shadows. But as Marcus walked away, a smile on his face as he texted Chloe, he didn't realize that Nia's poor family back in Ghana had already made a phone call. They had called a man in London. A man who sat in a glass office overlooking the Thames. A man who was the executor of the Real Mensah Trust. The man in London listened to the report from the village. He heard about the man in the Italian shoes, who had insulted the soil. He heard about the tears in Nia's eyes. He stood up and buttoned his blazer. Prepare the Atlantic Fleet, he told his assistant. And call the transport team in Atlanta. Tell them the princess of the soil is being mistreated. We arrive on Saturday. We're just getting started. Marcus thinks he's won. He thinks he's about to trade up for a richer life. But he's about to find out that Nia's father, Kofi, wasn't just a farmer. He was the founder of Mensah International, the largest cocoa and mineral conglomerate in West Africa. And the farm Marcus mocked was just the testing ground for his heart. Marcus just failed the test. And the price of that failure is coming in a convoy. To understand the fire that was about to consume Marcus Thorne's life, we have to look back at the morning of the wedding, 4 hours before Nia stood at the altar. Nia sat in the bridal suite of a small, cramped dressing room at the back of the cathedral. She was alone. Marcus's mother had refused to help her dress, claiming she had a migraine, but in reality she was in the main hall helping Chloe Sterling adjust her jewelry. Nia looked at the small wooden box her father, Kofi, had given her. It was made of simple cedar worn smooth by years of touch. She remembered his voice. Nia. Some people see a forest and think of lumber. Others see a forest and think of life. Never marry a man who only sees the wood. With trembling fingers she lifted the lid. She expected a photo of her mother. Perhaps a piece of heirloom gold jewelry. But inside there was only a heavy, ancient-looking iron key and a single piece of parchment, yellowed with age. She unfolded it. It wasn't a letter of love. It was a certificate of incorporation and a bank routing number for a private vault in Zurich. The heading at the top made her breath hitch. Mensah Minerals and Global Cocoa Holdings. Underneath, in her father's elegant script, were the words, "To my daughter. You worked the fields with me. You served the tables. You drove the old car. You did this so you would know the value of a dollar earned by sweat. This key opens the vault to the Mensah Trust. Your current balance is $480 million. Use it to build schools. Use it to build lives. But Nia, only open this if the man standing beside you has proven he loves the girl from the cocoa farm, not the queen of the counting house." Nia stared at the number. $480 million. Her father hadn't been a simple farmer. He had been a titan who chose to live among his people. He had tested her. And now she realized he had provided the ultimate test for Marcus. She looked at the key. She could have walked out right then. He could have called Marcus and told him. But she remembered the way he looked at her shoes. She remembered the way he insulted her father's legacy. "One more chance," Nia whispered to the empty room. "I'll give him one more chance to choose me." She hid the key in the garter of her dress. She walked out to that altar, praying that Marcus would see her soul. Marcus had just finished his speech about Nia being penniless. He was holding Chloe Sterling's hand, looking like he had just won the lottery. "Security," Marcus yelled, waving his hand toward the back of the church. "Please escort this woman out. She's trespassing on a high society event. This cathedral is reserved for people who can actually contribute to the building fund." 2 guards, looking uncomfortable, started toward Nia. The guests were whispering, holding up their phones, the flashes hitting Nia like tiny stabs of lightning. Nia stood her ground. Her voice, which had been a whisper, suddenly found its "You don't have to escort me out, Marcus. I'm leaving. But before I go, I want you to know something. You said you did the math. But you forgot one thing. In your equations, Marcus laughed, a cruel, jagged sound. And what's that, Nia? The value of your used Toyota. You forgot that a river doesn't drink its own water, Nia said, quoting her father. And a man who only drinks from the fountain of others will eventually die of thirst. You chose a seat at a table that doesn't belong to you. Enjoy the meal, Marcus. It's going to be the most expensive lunch of your life. As Nia turned to walk down the aisle, the heavy oak doors of the cathedral didn't just open, they were thrown wide. The light from outside was blinding. The sound was the first thing people noticed. Not the sound of voices, but the low, synchronized hum of high-performance engines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 black Rolls-Royce Phantoms pulled into the cobblestone courtyard of the church. They were flanked by a dozen men in dark suits on motorcycles. Like a presidential motorcade. The laughter in the church died instantly. Marcus froze. Chloe let go of his hand, her eyes widening. The lead car stopped exactly at the foot of the stairs. A man stepped out. He was tall, dressed in a charcoal suit that cost more than Marcus's entire apartment. He carried a silver-tipped cane, but he walked with the power of a king. This was Julian Vance, the most feared hedge fund manager in Europe and the primary executor of the Mensah estate. He didn't look at the crowd. He didn't look at Marcus. He walked straight up the steps into the cathedral and stopped in front of Nia. The silence was so absolute you could hear the wax dripping from the altar candles. Julian Vance bowed his head. Lady Nia. My apologies for the delay. The Atlantic crossing had a headwind. Your father's legal team is assembled at the hotel. We are ready to begin the transition of the holdings to your name. Nia looked at him, her face calm. Thank you, Julian. I'm ready. Marcus stumbled forward, his face a mask of confusion. Wait. Vance. Julian. Vance. I sent you 3 emails last month trying to get a meeting. What are you doing here? Who is this woman? Julian Vance turned. He looked at Marcus as if he were a bug on the windshield of a Rolls-Royce. This woman is the majority shareholder of Mensah International. She owns the minerals in the ground. She owns the cocoa in the ships. And as of 10 minutes ago, through a debt acquisition, she owns the building you work in, Mr. Thorne. Marcus's jaw dropped. What? No, that's impossible. She's a waitress. She's from a dirt farm. Julian leaned in, his voice a cold, sharp blade. She was the waitress. He was the farm girl. Because she was being raised to understand the world. You, however, were raised to be a predator. And a predator who cannot tell the difference between a lamb and a lion is a predator who starves. Julian turned back to Nia. The convoy is waiting, my lady. Your father's sisters have arrived from Kumasi. They are waiting to dress you in the gold and silk you were born for. We have a gala to attend. A real one. Nia looked at Marcus one last time. He was trembling now. He looked at Chloe. But Chloe was backing away from him. She was a sterling, she knew how to spot a sinking ship. Wait, Marcus stammered. It was a joke. Wanted to see if you'd stay with me even if I was mean. It was a test. Nia adjusted her mother's dress. You're right, Marcus. It was a test. You just failed. Julian. Yes, my lady? Call the Sterling Group. Tell them that if they proceed with the partnership with Marcus Thorne's firm, Mensah International will pull all mineral exports from their factories. Effective immediately. Consider it done, Julian smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a man who had just seen a billionaire born. The aftermath of that day was a whirlwind that the city of Atlanta would talk about for decades. Within 2 hours, the video of the Rolls-Royce bride had 50 million views. But the real destruction happened in the boardrooms. Marcus Thorne didn't get to go to his honeymoon. He didn't even get to finish his champagne. By the time he reached his office on Monday morning, his keycard didn't work. His belongings were in a cardboard box on the sidewalk. His boss, a man who had once praised Marcus for his killer instinct, wouldn't even look him in the eye. You insulted the daughter of the man who provides 40% of our raw materials. Marcus, his boss said through the intercom. You're not just fired. You're radioactive. No firm in this city will touch you. Even Chloe Sterling has blocked your number. Her father told her that if she stayed with you he'd cut her off. And we know how Chloe feels about money. Marcus sat on the sidewalk, his $4,000 tuxedo ruined by the rain that began to fall. He was truly penniless now. He had spent his last $10,000 on the deposit for a penthouse he could no longer afford, thinking he would be living off Nia's inheritance or Chloe's family wealth. He had gambled everything on the math of greed, and the math had come up zero. Meanwhile, at the St. Regis ballroom, a different kind of event was taking place. Nia didn't look like a waitress anymore. She wore a gown of hand-woven Kent cloth, threaded with actual 24-karat gold. Around her neck was the heart of Kumasi, a diamond the size of a pigeon's egg. She stood before a room of the world's most powerful leaders. But she didn't talk about money. She didn't talk about power. She talked about a man in a flannel shirt who taught her how to plant cocoa seeds. My father taught me that wealth is a costume, Nia told the silent room. You take off the suit and the watch and the car and you are left with nothing but a cold heart. Then you were never rich. You were just a mannequin for expensive things. She announced the creation of the Kofi Mensah Foundation, a $100 million initiative to build sustainable farms and schools across West Africa. He turned the poverty Marcus mocked into the engine of change for thousands of people. 6 months later, Nia was driving through the city. He no longer drove the Corolla. She sat in the back of a quiet electric sedan. As they passed a construction site near Buckhead, she saw a man in a neon vest hauling bags of cement. It was Marcus. His face was tan from the sun, his hands calloused and dirty. He looked up as the car slowed down. He recognized her. For a moment their eyes met through the glass. Nia didn't feel anger. She didn't feel revenge. She felt a profound, quiet pity. She rolled down the window. Marcus stopped, the heavy bag of cement trembling in his arms. Nia, he whispered, his voice cracked. I lost everything. My car, the apartment. Chloe's getting married to a senator next month. I'm living in a trailer park. Nia, please. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Nia looked at his dirty hands, the hands that once refused to touch a poor girl. That's the problem, Marcus, Nia said softly. You only respect what you know. The price of. You never learned the value of what is free. My father worked harder than you ever will, and he did it with a smile because he knew who he was. You're just a man in a vest trying to find a shortcut that doesn't exist. She reached into her bag and pulled out a single $20 bill. She handed it to him. What's this for? Marcus asked, his eyes filling with tears of shame. For the tip, Nia said. For the service you provided me. You showed me exactly what kind of man I didn't want to be with. That's a service I can never truly repay. She rolled up the window. The car pulled away, leaving Marcus standing in the dust of his own choices. And that, my friends, is the lesson of the princess of the soil. In this world, people will try to measure you. They will look at your shoes, your car, and your title. They will try to tell you that because you have nothing in your pockets, you have nothing in your soul. But remember, Nia. Remember that the most powerful woman in the room started by picking wildflowers and serving tables. Your current situation is not your final destination. Marcus Thorne learned the hard way that when you play with people's hearts based on their bank accounts, the universe eventually sends you the bill. And the universe always collects. Your value doesn't decrease because someone fails to see it. It's the person who fails to see it who loses out on the treasure. If this story moved you, if it reminded you to keep your head high even when you're being counted out, hit that like button right now. Share this with someone who is going through a hard time and needs to remember their worth. And don't forget to comment, I am priceless, below to let the community know you're standing in your truth. Before you go, check out the other stories on our channel. We have a whole archive of legendary paybacks waiting for you. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you're the first to know when the next humble hero rises. Because on this channel, every tale has a lesson and modernist Africa folktale. Never forget.